conversation on community and the courts with none other than the Judge Ericka James. Will you clap your hands and welcome her? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And if you don't mind, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience and our community who may be watching this.
Okay. As Pastor said, I am Ericka James. I am a district court judge, but I am a retired district court judge, first elected to the bench in 2012. And so I've got over 10 years on the bench, and although I retired in 21, I continue to serve as an emergency district court judge. And so that means if there are conflict of interest cases, if there are judges who have to be out for training or things of that nature, then I may be called to cover their courts. In fact, I held court in Goldsboro just last week. But that's a fun experience in and of itself because I get to travel all over the state. I have held court in the mountains. I've held court at the beach. I've held court in our nation's capital in Raleigh, and of course here in our district. So it's been an honor to do that.
I love it. So for many of us, if we be honest, the only contact we've had with a judge is law and order, night court. So what is it like in your life? Just kind of give us, what is life like for an actual judge?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the strangest things, when you first become a judge, your name changes. Mm-hmm. You're no longer Ericka or Mrs. James. You are judge. Mm-hmm. And even people, your colleagues that you have known for years, that you've worked with for years, just because of the respect for the position, they too will call you judge. Mm-hmm. So, and interestingly enough, judges in North Carolina are required to attend training, call it a new judges school. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you're taught at school is to not get robitis, the robe disease, mm-hmm. because so many of us run that risk of thinking more highly of yourself than you ought.
That's good.
Because of the robe. And so it is taken so seriously that it's something that is stressed even in the training for North Carolina judges.
With the responsibility, which is weighty, it also, I'm sure, comes with great sacrifice. So I'm just curious, from a life perspective, are there any sacrifices? I mean, going out, do you go to the grocery store? I mean, what type of sacrifices have you had to make while you serve?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes you do go out and you see people that you know, and you don't know how you know them, but they sure know you. I remember one occasion I was volunteering for the YMCA used to put on the Wise Men's Christmas program. Mm-hmm. And so they would have volunteers go out and shop with parents. Mm-hmm. And so I took this young lady shopping one day, and we were buying stuff for her kids for Christmas, and she said, "I know you." I said, "You do?" She said, "Yeah, you sent me to jail." And this is a woman who's riding around in my car. But the funny thing was, she said, I needed to go.
That's good.
And my mother talked to me about it and told me that I was not doing what I needed to do. And so you made the right decision. But yes, I know you because you sent me to jail. So certainly those kinds of things happen. And that's why I kind of try to stay out of the Walmart because I always see people I know when I go into Walmart. But as much as it is a sacrifice, it is also an honor.
Absolutely.
Because even for that woman who says, you know, although you sent me to jail, it was something that needed to happen. I have met so many people whose lives that I touched by the decisions that I made on the bench. Um, and for me, on some level, it is work. And so while I'm working, I'm going to try to do the best that I can, but it is still work. And I know that I'm dealing with people's lives, but it is still work. And so when they come to me and say, you touched me, I now have a child because you terminated someone's parental rights so that I could adopt the baby that I had been loving all my life. You made me a parent, or, you know, it was your work in the drug court that touched me and helped me get on the right path. Those kinds of things make the sacrifices all worth it.
So at what point in life, as a child, a teenager, did you say, I want to be a judge?
Never. Never. I never even knew that I would be an attorney. So when I graduated college, well, first let me back up a little bit. When I went to college, I started out at Howard University.
Let's go.
Because I was desperate to attend an HBCU and got the cream of the crop. For anyone who did not go to Howard University, I'm sorry, A&T.
Shade. Wow.
But I have to be honest, I kind of went in the front door and came out the back. I could not stay at Howard because I couldn't afford to be there. So I went my first year, I went back my second year, and then I left Howard and finished up at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. My home is Virginia. But in the course of my college career, I changed my degree multiple times. And finally, my mother said, Ericka, don't you think it's time for you to buckle down and get out of school? And so I ended up majoring in business information systems. I thought I was going to be a computer programmer. And my first job out of law school was as I was offered a position as a D-base programmer. And you young folk in here might not know what D-base is because I don't even believe they use it anymore. But nonetheless, I was offered a position with the U.S. government as a D-base programmer. And the gentleman who hired me, his name was Bob Woodard, he said, we're waiting for funding to come through, as is sometimes the federal government is wont to do. So we're waiting for the funding. I can't give you a start date right now, but in the meantime, my wife's an attorney. She needs a paralegal. Here's her card. Give her a call. I called her, and I never saw Bob Woodard again. And then later, I became a paralegal with the Virginia Attorney General's office. And so I'm working in the prisoner litigation section, supporting the attorneys who were practicing in federal court all the time. And my job was to write and research various issues, constitutional law claims that the prisoners had made. And so occasionally my work is submitted along with the attorney's work in the brief he may have submitted to the court. And so I would go home and complain to my mother, Mom, this attorney is using what I wrote. And that is not to cast aspersions on the Attorney General's office, because I worked with brilliant attorneys. And it was an honor for me for them to use my work. But on one particular occasion, I wrote something, and it was submitted to the court, and the federal judge, when he issued his opinion, he quoted from me verbatim. And I told my mother, and she said, don't you think you need to go to law school?
Wow.
And so I did. And that is how I had no idea that I would even go to law school, much less become a judge. But I trust, I honestly believe that the Lord directed my path.
Amen. So for children, youngers who may be watching, what was like the original dream? Before what we see now, was there kindergarten, elementary, this is what I want to be? What was the original dream for you?
Well, what I remember is that the original dream was probably a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it is real clear. I think at one time I thought I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to, what I would say to children is if you don't know what you want to do, if it's not clear, don't worry about that. Just do the basics. And when I say do the basics, I don't mean do the bare minimum. I mean listen to your parents and get an education.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do those two things, then God will take care of the rest. And that's what I believe happened to me. And I might still be a writer one day. I'm not so sure about that. I've been working on a project, and my husband is saying, yeah, you're just messing around, because if you were going to do it, you'd have done it a long time ago. But, I mean, I trust that God is so good, so big, and so powerful, and his dreams and plans for us are so much more than we ever know or dream for ourselves, that the sky is the limit. And even though on Monday I'll be 54, life ain't over for me, it's just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because God has so much in store for me, and I honestly believe that. And I believe children should believe that about themselves too.
I love it. We celebrate that, and happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What are some of the responsibilities that you carry in your office, the daily duties? What are some of the things we should know about as it relates to how you serve in office?
I think, so the usual stuff, the things that I think most people think about: judges preside over cases, determine guilt or innocence, and sentence people to jail. Judges also decide liability or in cases of civil issues. But I think probably the most important thing to know about the work that we do is that it is serious. And one thing that really burns me up, people have become desensitized, I think, to court and the reality of the import of the decisions that are made there every day. I see people come to court almost as if it's a social occasion, just to hang out with their friends. Just recently, I had a young man come into court, and he brought a child, and we say, you don't bring children into court. It's not a place for children to be, unless, of course, they're testifying, God forbid, because something traumatic has happened to them. We don't bring children into court, but because people come to court so often, so regularly, and unfortunately we do see regulars, that they become desensitized to the things that are happening in the court and the seriousness of it. And so I can bring my kid to court the same way I take my child to the grocery store. But if you were going to work, you'd make other arrangements for your child. If you're coming to court, you make other arrangements. I think people need to understand that court is serious business. It is not a place to play around. And we need to treat it that way, as well as the people who work in the court system, because so many of us many times can get jaded. Mm-hmm. And it ought not to be that way, because the court is it's the bulwark of our Constitution and our foundation.
So again, the premise on you being here is to provide us a little insight, education, enrichment, exposure as we are preparing to go into an electorate season. Of course, as a ministry, we push, promote, advocate for all of our people to get involved. From your perspective, what are some things from an awareness standpoint that we should know, whether from a local level, a regional level, a national level, to your level of comfort? What are some areas that you would encourage us in? More importantly, even making better impact here in our local area?
I would say engage and get involved. Most importantly, because your local officials are the ones who are going to, by and large, make decisions that affect you and affect your family. in a much closer way than some of the federal decisions that are made in DC. While those are important, we need to pay attention to who's asking for our vote, who's going to be representing us and making decisions about our taxes, about our schools, about what happens to our loved ones if they should end up in the court system. And so I would say to people, really be engaged, ask questions, vote, participate in the process. People died for us to be able
Absolutely.
to do this. And, you know, really, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, women got the right to vote in 1921, I think it was. That's not, it's just 2024.
Right.
That's not that long ago. So these are serious things that people actually engaged and fought about so that we could have the privilege to decide whether to vote or not to vote. Don't do that, I would say. Participate, honor what the ancestors did, honor the sacrifices that they made. So I think that's terribly important.
Are there any additional ways that you can suggest for, as local citizens, for us to become involved, being informed, being aware, participating in the voting process? Anything additional you would recommend?
Well, there are all sorts of community organizations that are trying to engage people to participate. And I would say search out those organizations. If you can, you know, find out how to shop for something on the internet, you can find out what organizations are doing in your community. And of course, there are political parties. There is the Wayne County Democratic Party, the Wayne County GOP, or the Republican Party. There is there's a few nonpartisan groups. There's a community voter participation group. There are the sororities and fraternities. As a matter of fact, I believe the Deltas are hosting a candidate forum September 26th, I think it is. The Grantham Grange is hosting a candidate forum Monday. The NAACP, an organization that, you know, a lot of us don't engage with in numbers that used to be the situation. But that is a nonpartisan organization. And I mean, the architects of the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, they came from that organization. They founded that organization, were integral to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. So those are organizations that we can engage with to learn and ask questions. And then, you know, for young people, pay attention to what's happening in school, in your civics classes. You know, civics and government and history was one of my favorite subjects when I was in school. I talked to a group of young people a week or so ago, about 2 weeks ago, and several of the kids in the room did not know what the three branches of government were, did not understand that there's a thing called separation of powers. Now, some of our legislators today don't understand that either, but I digress. But there were kids who did not understand that there were three separate, co-equal branches of government. That should not be happening.
Right. You, a little bit earlier, you mentioned you mentioned Hampton, threw a little shade at A&T. Just a moment ago, you mentioned the Deltas, said nothing about the AKAs. You are treading on dangerous ground. I'm just saying, I want no parts of the smoke you're going to be receiving. But as we prepare for this electoral season, your name is going to be on a ballot. And considering that this is in no wise about pushing your agenda, we want to create space for if and when we were to see your name on the ballot, what other name would we see, and what can you share about that candidate to us?
So there are two people running for the Superior Court judge seat from Wayne County. myself, Ericka James, and the other contestant or candidate is Billy Strickland. I am running as the Democratic candidate. He's running as the Republican candidate. And the interesting thing about judicial races in North Carolina is that just since 2018, judicial races became partisan. For the 20 years prior to 2018, judicial races were nonpartisan. So now, 2018, you've got to declare an R or D next to your name, and that forces you to take a political side, if you will.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I still believe that judicial races, or that the judiciary itself, should be nonpartisan, is a nonpartisan endeavor in the work that you do. And because you're running for judge, there's certain things that you're limited in saying. You can't stake out a position on an issue that might ultimately come before you, because that would be improper. Judges should be impartial, fair, unbiased. So you asked what I could share about my opponent. He does have some redeeming qualities. In all seriousness, he's a local attorney, and I think for those of you who know him, a lot of people know that he's associated with Ashford's boxing gym. Steve Ashford is a local Goldsboro citizen who runs a boxing gym for young men, and not just young men, young women as well. And so my opponent has been, for a long time, involved with him in that gym. And so that is a wonderful endeavor. And in fact, I have sponsored a child in that program as well. But beyond that, my opponent has run for a number of positions. He's run for the Congress, he's run for the county commission, he's run for the state house or the state legislature. And the point I'm making is that all of those positions are traditional politician sort of positions where you are a policymaker, you are making legislation law. Judges don't do that. The only position I've ever run for is judge. It's the job I know, it's the job I love. A judge's job is to interpret the law and apply it to the facts. It is not to make the law. And so I say, if you want to be a politician and make the law, stay in Raleigh. Don't come playing politics in court.
So I can't remember off the top of my head, but I've seen your campaign slogan. Refresh me if
Focused on the law, not politics.
That's what it is. So I think what I just heard over the last 2 minutes, you really just explained that, and I saw that come out, focusing on the law and not on the politics. What could one expect from you in voting for you and seeing you in office? What could one expect from you?
I think what you can expect from me is that I'm going to be fair, and that I am going to do what I've done for the last 10 years on the bench, and that is apply the law to the facts in front of me. I am a compassionate person. I mean, I'm a human being. Human beings without compassion are probably robots or machines. I'm not that. But I am a person that recognizes the seriousness of court. I don't take it for granted. And so because I am that person, I also I do not permit a lot of foolishness in the courtroom. And that is from the attorneys or from the litigants. Because our court is too important, and the people who have issues that need to be resolved, they don't deserve that. They deserve our utmost professionalism and our attention, and so that's what you're going to get from me. And I say to people that, you know, I was a judge 10 years ago, but I am a better judge today than I was 10 years ago, because I have learned so much from being in that position. And I think that's what you can expect from me, is that I'm going to be fair and I'm going to be impartial. I will be tough. I make no bones about that. But I will be fair, and I am not going to play politics with your lives or your loved ones.
Thank you for that. We'll share this lastly in closing. What would you say to local citizens, young, old, as we're going into this election season, on our impact and our responsibility in being participants, and what that participation and or lack thereof, its impact on our local community?
Well, you hear people say all the time, if you don't vote, don't complain. Right? So if you want to make your voice heard, if you want to make known your concerns and have a say-so in how things are managed, then you have to participate in the process, and you elect people who represent what you believe is important, what you believe is right, and you hold those people accountable. Because you can't just check a box and then forget them. Because remember, they're public servants, and the court belongs to us. These roles for which people are campaigning, where they're counting on our votes to declare them a winner, they're there because we put them there. Remember, our government is a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Well, if the people don't engage, then what do we have? And so you have to believe that it's yours. It belongs to you, because it does. But it won't if you don't engage. And so I think that is so incredibly important. And I don't know if sometimes I feel like I'm not a realist, or people will say you're not a realist, because I do believe in the idea that if we get involved, we can change things. I honestly believe that. And so that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. And I think it's why the good Lord led me into this path, because he knows that that's my heart. And I have a heart for the people, and it's a way for me to help people to do the job that I do. But I do have to make one minor correction.
Okay.
So you said that I talked about Hampton University. No, I said Howard.
Oh,
the real HU.
listen. Are they playing each other today? Is Hampton and Howard playing each other today? I think they are.
See?
Yeah.
And as far as the AKAs, let me invite you. As I said, the NAACP is having a banquet tonight, but they are honoring a great trailblazer in this community, Ms. Ernestine Whitted Wooten, who was a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Listen, I love that you mentioned how, there are those who almost question you being a realist relative to believing if we participate, we can change things. I believe I share that same belief, and I believe that we are standing on the right side of history as history records the same sentiments, that if we participate, if we engage, if we encourage, we can, in fact, see change. So we are so appreciative for you sharing your time with us. If you don't mind, would you clap your hands and show love and honor? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.